Jeremy Saland is with us, criminal law attorney and former prosecutor. Thank you. It's good to see you. As I watched him go into court this morning, two things I noticed. One, he got a haircut. It looks like he's clean shaven, and he was quiet. What did you notice?
Yeah, well, more important than what I noticed going into the courtroom is what's going to happen in the actual courtroom itself. And this is where Karen Agnifilo, I'm sure, has taken the reins from what was going on before and saying, be quiet, let me do my job. Let's make this as easy and as quick as possible, because the extradition hearing is a non-hearing if he waives, which is a smart thing to do at this point. And I think exactly that is what's going to happen. He'll be back in New York, probably or likely by the end of today or tomorrow.
What do you make of the strategy change? Initially, we heard he would fight extradition. She comes on board, and that changes. What's the thought process?
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument to be made to say I stay here. It gives me more time to build my case. It gives me more maybe bites at that proverbial apple to get more evidence and learn a little bit more. But there's diminishing returns, especially when your real case is in New York and Manhattan, where your attorney is, where all her resources are, where I can see you on a daily basis or as much as I need to. So fighting it for the sake of fighting it would seem to be Mr. Dickey's approach. Arguing about bail, it really serves no greater good. It delays something that's inevitable. Let's get him to New York and do our job.
It appears there is mounting evidence against him, the forensic evidence at the crime scene, now this manifesto. What do you expect the defense, and how do you expect them to respond to that?
Yeah, I think in large part the defense needs to be, I may have committed the act, meaning the pulling of that trigger. That seems pretty strong with all the evidence we're seeing, whether the video, the firearm, the casings, et cetera. But I did not commit the crime. What does that mean? There's a necessary mental component here. And if you're arguing insanity, that I was not aware or fully aware of the consequences, which is still difficult here, by the way, then you're lacking that intent. So I think you have to take the angle that there's an insanity to defense, and even if not an insanity defense as a matter of law, I'm going to use that to mitigate the conduct to try to get lesser in that murder 2 and not that murder 1 and life without parole.
One of the things that has transpired here is his support in a certain pocket of the public based on, what he did and why he says he may have done it, as he's accused of. Does the defense attorney use that public support to their advantage, and what would that look like?
I don't think the public support helps here, because the whole purpose behind this terrorist charge is, and I think it's an overcharge, by the way, and I think there's a chance that that can be beaten potentially, whether in an application to the court in a motion to dismiss, when the grand jury minutes are reviewed, or a trial if it ever reaches that point. But the whole idea here is they don't want to copycat. They want to send a message, prosecutors, that there's no place here. So, I don't think you necessarily need to go to that public support. I think you need to stay within the four corners of the courtroom. We don't need people holding signs outside saying free, Luigi. That does nothing for my case. Karen's a smart woman. I worked with Joel Simon, who's a prosecutor. I worked with Karen as well as a prosecutor. They're both capable, competent attorneys. She's not fighting this with the protesters.
In some of these high-profile cases, I always ask if the defendant will testify in their own defense, and usually the answer is no. But in this case, he's already had some outbursts, and he clearly has a message he wants to share. Do you think that we might be looking at a situation where he wants to speak?
Well, he clearly wants to speak. What he wants to speak about, that is yet to be seen in terms of the case itself. But he's said a lot. He's had this memoir or the writings that he had. Memoir wasn't the right term, pardon me. But he wants to speak. Right now is not the time for him to speak, unequivocally so. Right now is the time for his attorneys. What we see down the road, I don't know, but certainly not at this part in the process. He's
in Pennsylvania. It sounds like he'll be extradited to New York. What happens then to the Pennsylvania charges?
So they don't just go away because there's separate charges to separate jurisdiction. So they're there. They're really, they're less. They are what they are, right? They're still serious, but they're not the full thrust of the case. That is what the Manhattan District Attorney's Office has already secured an indictment for. So he gets arraigned and likely remanded, meaning held without bail in New York. Now, whether the feds get involved, I don't know. Frankly, I don't think they should. I think sometimes the feds in New York in the Southern District want to be not just a bridesmaid, but the bride or the groom as opposed to the groomsman. And they may want to take that over. But, why would they do that here when we already have an indictment? We already have the possibility of life without parole. And why not do that in any other case where there's a domestic violence situation where someone crosses state lines, or a real terrorist or terrorism case. So I think the Fed should stay out, but evidently they may be interested as well.
So let's say he gets extradited. How soon will that happen? And does he head to Rikers? And what does his confinement look like as this proceeds?
Yeah, that could be as early as today. I would expect that overnight the NYPD was camped out in Altoona or wherever they are in that county court waiting to remove him. So that could happen today or tomorrow. I wouldn't be shocked, though, if it happened today, because that proceeding itself, in terms of the extraditions, would be pretty quickly. He comes to New York, he would be arraigned, he'd likely be remanded, held without bail, and sent to Rikers Island. And you're talking potentially, not potentially, Rikers is an ugly, dirty, disgusting place. That's going to be his home for the foreseeable future.
Wow. All right, criminal law attorney, former prosecutor Jeremy Saland, thank you so much for your time this morning.
My pleasure.